All right, let's just jump into the story. Explosion at University of Pittsburgh. Transgender debate causes safety emergency as protesters yell and chant. One protester set fire to a cardboard cutout with a conservative commentator's face on it, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Do they have the burning in effigy in this article?
They must.
They have the protest. They don't. But yes, Michael, so you were going to be debating at the university on transgender issues. I guess the professor backed out, and then far left extremists set fires and burned you in effigy.
This entire debate got more absurd by the day because I was invited by ISI, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, to debate this professor, Donald McCloskey, who now goes by Deirdre. He has transitioned. This is a very respected professor. This guy has 3 degrees from Harvard. He's got half a dozen honorary doctorates. He's got 24 academic publications. I am but a lowly podcaster. I have no particularly advanced degree. I've written 2 books. Only one of them has words in it, okay? The professor should have been down to debate. The professor didn't like me from the beginning, especially because of my CPAC speech, called me a fascist, called me an anti-Jesus Catholic.
What?
I guess he's Episcopalian or something. I really don't need to be lectured on theology by Episcopalians, but that's what he did.
Episcopalian?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He identifies that way at least. But he said, even though Knowles is terrible, it's important that we debate these issues. And he kept sort of insulting my intelligence. We had a pre-debate call just a few weeks ago in which he reiterated his desire to debate, and then a week or so before the debate, he pulls out. And he pulled out because he's intelligent. And I think he realized that not even a guy with 3 Harvard degrees and a whole bunch of honorary doctorates could defend this indefensible idea. I think he also may have pulled out because he realized that I'm not just a provocateur bomb thrower, like the literal bomb throwers that were outside of the building. I think he just realized I'm kind of relatively polite and we were just going to debate these issues. He couldn't do it. And so Brad Palumbo, the libertarian-leaning, I guess he would call himself a conservative, but he's a very left on LGBT issues. He filled in, and I give him a lot of credit for pinch hitting and allowing this debate to go on. But even with Brad, who's relatively moderate on these issues, relatively to today, where we're chopping off little kids' genitals, the protesters were just absolutely nuts, and they did everything they could to shut it down. They tried to burn me in effigy.
They did burn you.
Well, I guess they did burn me in effigy, but here I am, baby. I'm not burned at all.
What was it you said before that angered these people? That with transgenderism needed to be eradicated? The concept of transgenderism?
That's right. I probably haven't been on the show since the CPAC speech. Yeah, I said, I've now memorized this quote because it's come up in the news so much. For the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who've fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life, the whole preposterous ideology, at every level.
So how do you...
But let's clarify that. You were literally talking about gender ideology. You weren't talking about people.
Oh, of course, it's an ism, first of all, refers to a set of beliefs. And then, lest there be any confusion, I clarified in the parenthetical immediately. I said it's a preposterous ideology. I said for the good of the people who have this confusion, so presumably I don't want to murder these people. There was no way to misinterpret what I said, which is why the left-wing media just changed my words. So the Daily Beast, Rolling Stone, they defamed me. They admitted they defamed me because they ultimately changed the headlines.
You want to pull this up, Serge?
You know, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth catches up.
We have the video of Michael Knowles being effigy. Actually from Timcast News.
Right out of his neck and chest. Its neck and chest, we'll say it is an effigy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just
stash, yeah.
Right. I just look at this kind of stuff and I wonder, is the intention here to intimidate? Because the answer is simply put, yes.
Or black magic, yeah, who knows?
Black magic.
Also to intimidate my soul. But you're using a very specific word there, Tim. Why would you use that word?
Because we got a story earlier that in Charlottesville, they're indicting the Tiki Torch marchers. And they say it's because they burned something with the intent to intimidate. And it's like, dude, come on. We know what that bill is supposed to be, the law is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about like someone putting a cross in your yard and setting on a fire, not walking down the sidewalk,
lighting a cigarette. Yeah, exactly.
Saying dumb things, holding a tiki torch, which keeps mosquitoes away. And here's the thing, right? I hold that group in a similar disdain to as I hold these groups. Both are entitled to their free speech. But as you see, law enforcement goes in only one direction. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing because they're identitarians, the same as the white nationalists, but for like a different race. So I actually don't view their ideologies as different for the most part. You know, it's kind of weird.
Well, nobody is intimidated by either these people burning you in effigy because they look ridiculous, and nobody was intimidated realistically by the tiki torch marchers in Charlottesville wearing white polo shirts
And
having
I mean, I
their
will say,
nipples protruding,
when they were
very
throwing
disrespectful.
when they were throwing explosives at the wall, that I didn't feel worried because again, we take security very seriously. But that is a somewhat intimidating action when they're throwing explosives at you.
I would not call it
And
persuasion. I would definitely call it intimidation.
This is what I'm tired of. I'm tired of the attempt by the so-called moderate individuals. I consider myself fairly moderate, right? But I've heard this over and over again. When I was in Berkeley, someone took, I think it was an M80, and threw it in the air, and it landed next to an old woman and exploded, and she fell down. And I said, someone just threw an explosive at this old lady. And they're, oh, come on, it's a firecracker. It's not an explosive. Okay, not playing that game.
Yeah.
It's an explosive.
Did it explode?
It exploded. So
explosive.
M80s are not like little poppers that go pop.
M80s can take your fingers off.
They take your whole hand off. And so this woman like falls over. They also take these mortar shells, which are like the size of maybe tennis balls, maybe a little bit smaller. And when they explode, they spray. Like everyone's seen fireworks when they go up in the air and then it blossoms.
Yeah.
Imagine that on the ground. Those are explosives. And you get these people, first of all, the left will, of course, call them firecrackers because they want to minimize the language. But then you'll get people online being like, look, I don't like Antifa, but those are just fireworks, not explosives. And it's like, oh, okay, see what happens when one of those goes off next to your head.
Right.
They're both
You're-
fireworks and explosives. Yeah, fireworks are explosives.
Of course. And
But
why?
but just to clarify, I'll call it a firework if you put it in a tube and it launches into the air and it looks pretty. I'll call it an explosive when you're trying to kill people with it.
Yeah, like a knife isn't a murder tool unless you kill somebody with it.
Yeah, like exactly. It's I went to a steakhouse this past weekend and I love it when they walk up and they say, "Your knife, sir," and you get to pick one. You ever have that happen? It's like the second time in my life, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll take this one." He's not handing me a murder weapon. He's handing me a utensil. However, if someone took that and killed somebody, it would then be in a bag labeled murder weapon. Difference.
So, Michael, I got to ask, how do you, based on this quote that kind of set this all in motion about eradicating transgenders, and probably those two words are pretty extreme to have near each other, but how do you balance that with transgender people and your love or care for people that happen to be going through what they're going through?
Well, there is no such ontological category as transgender people. That there are people who are confused about their sex, but the whole point is that there is no such thing as a man who is secretly a woman. That's a false anthropology. And this is why the libs had to lie about what I said and change my words and throw explosives at me and burn me in effigy, because they have no answer to that, because we all know that that's true. We all know that these men are not actually women. And we're just lying to them to varying degrees. And this was, I think, the weakest part of Brad Palumbo's argument last night at Pitt was he tried to have a moderate position, which is, okay, these men are not actually women, but we should treat them as women in the bathrooms, but not on the sports teams, and we should do it to the 19-year-olds, but not the 17-year-olds, and it just is so arbitrary. Right. Either men can really be women or they can, and that was why the left reacted so much to my speech, because the libs thought that they had won on the issue of transgenderism. No one took this thing seriously 10 years ago. Now it is enshrined in our law, and they thought that they won, and they thought that the debate over transgenderism was now going to be, should we trans the 7-year-olds or should we wait till they turn 8? And in my speech, I said, no, guys, on certain issues, there's a middle ground, like taxes. We can come to a middle agreement. On immigration, what's the right number of immigrants? Either women have bathrooms or they don't have bathrooms. The minute you let a man into the women's bathroom, the women lose their bathroom. So we got to pick one.
But I think there is a moderate solution to that. It just single room bathrooms.
Right. You could abolish women's bathrooms altogether, but some women might say, the issue isn't that we don't have enough bathrooms out there, because this is the other people.
Fair point.
They'll say, well, we just need another sports team for the transgenders, but it's going to be, we'll need 2 more sports teams, one for the female to male transgenders and one for the male to female. So how many leagues are we going to have?
I disagree a little bit. I mean, I don't care. You make whatever league you want. You can make if they made a league where it's like a basketball team with 5 players and one of them has to be a woman, and we'll call it the 1 in 4 teams league. I don't care. Make up whatever league you want. The idea for me, I'll go back to the bathroom thing too. I'm at the airport this past weekend, and they have men's room, women's room, and then all gender in the middle. Guess which bathroom I used? All gender. You know
It's
why?
private.
It's a big private room. I'm like, this is fantastic. I can take my coat off. I can hang it up. I got like a big mirror to myself. Wash my hands. I think it's fantastic.
Those used to be called family bathrooms.
That's right. They just changed the label. Fair point, though. There's always a huge line coming out of the women's bathroom. So taking that bathroom away and giving them a single room is probably just going to make things
Probably going to have to
cluttered.
just turn the whole airport into a bunch of individual single-stall bathrooms.
My issue is when it comes to female sports is that we did not create women's leagues because sometimes people wear dresses. We created women's leagues because biological females have different physical characteristics and want to compete amongst themselves without men.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now the debate becomes, well, is a trans woman a woman? Then they can compete on the women's team. But it's like, no, hold on. If you're making the argument that women just refers to social constructs, let me just remind you, we did not create the WNBA because sometimes people wear dresses. This is real quick, because the women playing basketball in the WNBA are wearing the same jerseys that guys wear. Like the social constructs don't play a role.
It's so important, I think, to say like a boy is a boy, and if he becomes a trans girl or trans woman, he's still a boy that is a trans woman. Like you never stop being a boy, you never stop being a human. You're still a human that identifies as a carrot or whatever, or a man that identifies as a woman, but it's still a man and a trans woman together. You can be both.
But you're right, Ian. And the issue is they reject that.
I don't know. I've never really had a deep conversation with someone that is identifying.
There isn't one. This is the problem with it, is every time that I've tried to engage in a conversation with a serious person, I'm not just talking about some clout chasing YouTubers or whatever. I wanted the most serious pro-trans person there was. I got the best professor for it. And he pulled out of the debate. ISI then invited like a dozen people who are big in the transgender movement. None of them would debate because they can't debate it.
But here's you know what it is? I think I've thought about these issues, gun control, assault weapons, what is a woman, things like that. And I feel like I've done a better job articulating what their position should be.
Of course.
The issue is, and you could probably do the same, you could better articulate an argument on their behalf. Yep. But if you're being consistent, you're being logical and honest, you arrive more in a position where we are. You'd say, oh, okay, I can't make those arguments.
Well, there's just no way to make it work because they make a lot of mutually contradictory arguments. On the one hand, they'll say, well, transgenderism is when your true self doesn't align with your body. But so I guess your soul is female, but your body's male.
I don't believe in souls.
But they also don't believe in souls. So then they'll make a materialist argument. They'll say, okay, well, no, it's actually your body is male, but your brain is female, which first of all is based on just complete bunk science. And there are interesting ways to debunk the methodological issues in those studies, but it's nonsense.
I think that was formally debunked, though, to be honest.
Of course
there was I remember there was a big issue with transracialism, like 7 years ago. And people were trying to use this idea that a brain could be male or female and the body could be different as the explanation. And then something happened where an academic created a transracial argument saying that individuals who have, let's say a person is like 2.7% Asian and they present white, they may have within their minds that they're actually Asians. And the left went and lost it because now, whoa, no, white people aren't, you can't do that. And so that kind of broke the whole argument.
The other reason the brain studies are crazy is one, men and women's brains are a little bit different, but the problem is the studies, when they're looking at the brains, they're looking at people generally who have been on these cross-sex hormones forever. So you can't know if the hormones themselves are changing the brain makeup. Also, the way in which the brains are a little bit different, say the brain of a trans woman from a man, the difference does not make the brain look like a female brain. It makes it look like a little bit different entirely. Right. And so there are all sorts of problems with that. But even then, the problem with their argument is your brain is part of your body. So you're saying part of my body is male, but the other part is female, but it doesn't actually show up on the scan. It just doesn't make sense.
Here's what confused me with all of it. The question, what is a woman? I can easily answer the question for the left, but they can't answer their own question. I don't quite understand.
So what would you think
the
is
leftist definition of woman is a human who identifies as an adult human female.
Right.
Because, and it wasn't hard for me to think that, like they said, female is sex and woman is social construct. And I said, okay, so if someone's a woman, they're identifying as a biological female, but not.
Right.
How come not one leftist has ever said that sentence?
It's a great point because it remains kind of circular, but in a charming way. This is why I don't even really love the...
Right, it's the social construct argument attached to biology.
Right, but I don't even just love the biological argument, because I sort of think it partakes of the same soul-denying scientism that got us in this mess in the first place. If the answer to what is a woman is 2 X chromosomes in a womb, I think, I think there's more to it than that, man. Maybe sugar, spice, and everything nice. A woman is much more than her body, but a woman is at the very least her body. And it's not like this is a brand new question that cropped up. We do have thousands and thousands of years of very sophisticated thinking on what constitutes a man and what constitutes a woman. But the moment you try to engage in that conversation, the transgenderists run away, because there is no way to defend it. The big divide I see here is not between the men and women and the trans and the whatever the opposite of trans is. It's between people who view humanity as being made up of intellect and will. I've got an intellect so I can perceive the truth, and I've got a will so I can act on it. And the people on the left who say, forget that intellect stuff. It's all about the will.
I think what I'm thinking. This is where I keep coming to. I think what's happening is there's the Catholic, the Christian conservative that says that a spirit impregnated Jesus's mother, that somehow, and it's like, I'm into reality. So if a guy's going to say a boy is a girl, I'm into reality. A boy is a boy, and spirits do not impregnate women. You need male sperm.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the virgin birth did happen, and the incarnation's the pivot of history. But you're right. One of those things is fantastical, and one of them is the miracle that directs the entire course of history.
What's happening is people that are identifying as a woman that is a man is like, well, they say that ghosts can impregnate people, so why do I even take it seriously?
Not ghosts.
They're denying the
God itself
categories of male and female altogether. They're denying that there are natural laws. Miracles are just things that happen that deviate from the natural laws, seemingly for supernatural reasons.
But you've got to admit, saying that God could impregnate a woman's body is mythical. That's fantastical.
What?
I think you're in 2 separate categories, and you're conflating these things.
I'm trying to find a solution between the magical thinking.
I'll explain it to you. God is omnipotent. Right? God is the creator. God is outside of time and space. And the mystery of the incarnation is that God, the divine logic of the universe, the Logos, takes on human flesh and dwells among us. And this is the pivot of history. Now, the reason this is not magical thinking is God, being defined as the maximally great being, as omnipotent, can do what he wills, especially as he is logic itself. A little boy is not God. A little boy is not omnipotent, or a 25-year-old man for that matter. And so when a 25-year-old man says, I'm actually a woman, and comes up with some cockamamie explanation as to why that is, that can't make sense. Now, I'm not insisting that you believe in God, but I am pointing out that if you acknowledge that some things are better than other things, and that an intelligible world probably implies an intelligence that created the world that's outside of time and space, then the existence of miracles is not something that's crazy or unbelievable. That would naturally follow from that.
I'll just address it for you, Ian. If a boy was witnessed by, let's just say a young man, 20 years old, 6 foot tall, walked into a town center, walked into Columbus Circle in New York City, and hundreds of people gathered around, and then he went, something strange is happening, and then transformed into a woman. That's a miracle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's impossibility.
And that exactly is the difference between your argument. When someone comes out and says that they can undergo surgery and they're now a woman, they're not. They're a man who undergoes surgery.
I agree with that. But I believe in God. I think there is a God.
All right, so hold on. The difference is the left is not making the argument that a man magically transformed by power of God into a woman. They're arguing that they can surgically change their bodies or medically, and that makes them the same as someone who was born female.
They're arguing that it's not supernatural, that it's actually just a natural fact of the world.
I feel like the argument is they're saying green is red when I want it to be red. And I'm saying, well, let's just be real. Green is green, red is red. And
you're right. The difference between that and, say, like faith-based miracle believing, they're just different categories.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, they're definitely different categories, but different ways of kind of taking leaps of assumption about things that I think are patently impossible. I've never seen an inkling of evidence that God could impregnate a human body.
Well, you're talking about faith versus denying.
It's also
reality.
I think it's also faith. Transgenderism is faith.
But look, I can only say it like one more time. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same. But I'm trying to find a through line in a solution.
But it's not. I think you're attaching two things that don't come together.
You're mesmerized by a central miracle in the history of the world, the pivot of history. But are you saying, let's put that aside for a moment, are you saying that no miracles can happen? You think the idea of miracles itself is impossible?
Well, miracle, how would you define miracle?
A suspension of the natural laws in a way that is improbable and fantastical and supernatural.
That is possible because we were still learning what the natural laws are as we gain more
there
physics
you go.
knowledge.
There you go.
But I've never seen any evidence of
Ian,
someone...
let me try it this way. Is it possible we live in a simulation?
Yeah.
Could the person in control of the simulation alter the code on a whim to, say, impregnate a woman?
Yeah, but you got to say that the
yes, sir.
possibility of being in a simulation is near zero.
It's actually closer to 1 if you,
I would
if you
say it's
believe the
100 million trillionth of a percent.
But let's not deviate. Let's assume that we're in a simulation. It's possible.
That's not a good assumption because that is a very unlikely.
You're just trying to avoid answering.
Do you have any evidence? But okay, go for it.
Yeah, didn't you? You already granted the possibility.
It is, but a lot of things are possible and improbable. It's not probable.
Simulation theory is possible. There are many smart thinkers. The easiest one is Elon Musk. That's because he's so famous. Who believe that if it is possible to create a universe, to simulate a universe based on our current, here's the idea. Based on our current level of technology, we have created such vast virtual worlds. In 30 years, with the advent of this technology, it is likely that in another 30 years, we'll be able to create things indistinguishable from reality. Considering where deep fakes are at already, yeah, we're only probably 10 years away from being able to render on the fly universes. So if assuming
at most 10 years,
at most, I mean, that might be a little long.
Yeah.
With deepfakes already to the point where they can make Joe Rogan say whatever they want him to say, and even show him. There was a commercial of Joe Rogan selling a product because they just typed into a computer, pressed enter, and it rendered a video. Now imagine they have to do the exact same thing, but using 3D modeling like Unity or something, Unreal Engine or something like that. It would not. We're only a few years away from that. So this is the argument about simulism. That if it is possible for us to do in only a few years, there is a strong likelihood we actually exist in such a universe.
I take it.
Now, but I don't want to deviate too far. My point is just this.
I don't like that analogy, by the way. I don't like that belief that if we might do it in the future, if it's likely that we'll do it in the future, that it already happened doesn't make sense.
But you already granted the point, Ian, right? That miracles are possible.
Possible is a strange word because 0.0 trillionth of a percent possible.
But you're just making up that probability.
But also the word miracle is vague.
I got to agree. You're making up that probability.
It's not that vague.
You might see a crack of lightning that looks like a guy's face.
A miracle is a supernatural event. Not a natural event, but a supernatural event.
But Ian, you are making up that probability. That's not it.
Oh, no, absolutely. None of us can quantify it.
Simply put, there is a difference. Okay, I'll put it this way. You make a video game. You as the programmer can decide, you're playing The Sims. You can literally lift the person up, put them in a bathroom, and get rid of the door. You can do that as the person in control of this universe.
So I'll grant you this. There might be a technology in the future where you can vibrate a woman's womb.
That's not... You're completely misunderstanding.
We always get to the vibrations.
When I'm programming a video game, I can just right-click, insert object, and manifest a goblin. There's no point at which I have to find a person and then draw on him and make him. No, like when you're programming something, you can just put it there. When you're playing Fallout and you want to build a treehouse, you click a button, boom, the treehouse appears. There's a difference between you being a programmer who can make something happen and in the game a character deciding they are not what you made them. It's
a very good analogy.
Yeah, but if the power goes out, good luck convincing anyone we're in a simulation. Like we're like fantasizing about some ridiculous possibility because we have electricity.
Is that?
I'm not trying to fantasize. I'm trying to point out that arguing someone who is biologically male, who you can observe their DNA under an electron microscope and see they have X and Y chromosomes, coming out and saying actually after the surgery they're now female, because this is one component of this. I was at I often mention I'm sitting at poker tables because that tends to be what I'm doing on the weekends. There was a dealer and someone brought up on the TV, they were having a discussion about men and female sports. And the dealer said something like, it was kind of obvious the dealer was not taking kindly to all of these 30 to 40-year-old men who were not happy with this. They were grumbling about it. And then I said something like, the dealer said transgender females. And I said, no, you mean transgender males. A transgender female is a trans man, and a transgender male is a trans woman. And he was like, no, wait, what? No. He got upset about it. The point is, if someone is female and they are transgender, they have a womb, they have breasts, but they want to exhibit the characteristics of a male. That is a trans man. What's happening now is the left is conflating they are saying female and woman mean the same thing now. So you'll often hear people say transgender female to refer to a biological male who wants to be a woman.
Right.
They're confusing the language.
Well, it has to be confused because there's no argument for it. And to your point, Ian, you're saying, well, I don't like magical thinking on the left, so I don't want magical thinking on the right either. But the difference here is there are many good arguments for the existence of God, and then we can get into miracles from the existence of God. But there are many good arguments. I could give you 5 right now. I could probably give you 10 right now. And there are no good arguments for transgenderism. And so this is why we have theology. This is why we've had very wise men for thousands of years discussing this in a reasoned way. And this is why not even a esteemed scholar on transgenderism will show up to debate this issue. So I think if we just follow logic, you might choose not to believe in the miracles. You might choose not to believe in God even. But there's a logical argument for that. There is no logical argument.
I actually think God is logical at this state with quantum physics and the ability to see cosmic microwave background radiation. It looks like a neural path.
And that's what Michael's saying about logos and the embodiment.
Yeah, it is. It seems like a
I wasn't
sentient
talking about the
waveform.
microwaves, but I was talking about
Like God seeming as a sentient waveform doesn't necessarily mean that these miracles were real just because someone told me that.
I just want to. I'll make one more point. We're going to move to another story.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about this all night. Baby.
No, it's just because you're saying the same thing over and over.
It's important because I think the people, the transgender community, is not taking your stuff seriously because of that kind of just accept it.
But look. I read a book when I was 19 years old that I would say made me believe in God. I've told the stories about the conversations I've had with people who are religious when I view myself as an atheist. And the book that I actually read was about quantum physics and putting electrons through conductors and then trapping them to simulate elements and things of that nature. And the prospect that we could create one-dimensional sheets of an element that by altering the amount of electrons we push through the conductors, we could change the elemental properties and things like that. I started reading that stuff, and then it made me start to think about the universe, think about simulation theory and logic. And then I was like, oh, wow, like I'm starting to see a bigger picture here. Understanding that there is like we are in some kind of logical system. The universe, it's hard to quantify, to be completely honest.
Well, it's the very fact that you're speaking in a way that is intelligible to me presupposes that there is such a thing as logic outside of ourselves, and it implies an intelligent creator.
I want to make sure I get this one before they try and take a clip. My point is, humans write math. We then create equations and solve problems, and humans have a degree of understanding of math. That is not a human creation. It is humans mapping the logic of the universe, meaning the logic of the universe exists to a massive degree well beyond our comprehension, and we have a tiny little flashlight that we're pointing in the dark and writing down what we see. It's possible that after billions of years, humans create this big, huge quantum blackboard showing all of the code that we would describe of the universe, and that is the logic or whatever you describe it as, but we can only see a tiny piece of it. It's real, it exists, and we're mapping it out. Within the confines of that, to say something like, yes, this thing is discernibly wood, it's a word we use to describe this carbon structure, I've decided it's metal. That doesn't do anything. You can't, and here's another example, 2 + 2 = 5, they say. Well, no, it doesn't. And it's funny because when I was a teenager, I actually got into an argument with a friend of mine who was in high school, and they were teaching this back then. She told me 1 + 1 does not equal 2. That's a social construct. And I said, what are you talking about? No, it isn't. And I was like, I have a pen in this hand. I grabbed pens off her table and I was like, here's a pen, here's a pen. I have 1 pen here, 1 pen here. There's 2 pens in my hand. There will never be a circumstance where that is 3 pens. Yeah. And then she's like, you don't understand. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.